Today's airy tale was shared by an online friend. His last name is Jung and we'll call him Jung. Jung hails from a military family in Lanzhou, Gansu. His father is a veteran who has seen combat. After the war, Jung's father was transferred to Sichuan for garrison duty. Consequently, Jung was born in Chengdu, Sichuan, and now works and lives in Guangdong. During the 2020 May Day holiday, Jung promptly returned to Lanzhou to visit his family. Afterward, he used the remaining vacation time to join several friends on a road trip across the Northwest by renting a car. The trip was incredibly enjoyable. The route for this self-drive tour was collectively planned by the group. It started from Lanzhou. Gansu passed through the Labrong Monastery in Xia County, Gannan, and followed the Hexi corridor, fully enjoying the desert scenery along the Kili and mountains. They traveled through famous cities like Dunhuang, Jianji, and Wuwei, stopped by Qinghai Lake, and made a brief halt at the so-called Sky Mirror, the Chakar Salt Lake. Their final destination, 400 kilometers away from Chakar Salt Lake, was the Dachaden Malachite Lake, an untouched paradise that had not yet been officially developed and was locally known as a stunning sapphire. Upon arriving at the Malachite Lake, Jung and his friends were overjoyed. The beauty of the lakeside scenery was beyond description. Moreover, since the place had not been fully developed, it lacked any commercial atmosphere and was purely natural and beautiful. Having endured the hardships of the pandemic, everyone felt that such beauty and tranquility were truly precious. Next to the tent they had set up, they enjoyed roasted meat, drank Highland barley wine, and chatted animatedly. At that moment, Jung, emboldened and by the alcohol, recounted several airy stories he had heard to his friends. One of the friends sitting nearby, Jung, suddenly spoke up and said, "I've heard a very strange experience, and I'd like to share it with everyone. Is that okay?" Everyone replied, "Absolutely, please do." Jung had been invited by one of Jung's friends to join them on this road trip. He was a seasoned member of a local off-road club with extensive experience in off-road driving and having visited many places. He was a very kind person and had known Jung for many years. With him on board, everyone felt very reassured. Even if they encountered some difficulties, they were confident that they could resolve them smoothly. When Jung began his story, he said it happened to his neighbor. However, as the story unfolded, it became increasingly bizarre, and it seemed quite sinister. Judging by Jung's expression and tone, Jung and the others exchanged glances, each thinking the same thing. Was this really something that happened to his neighbor? For the sake of this story, let's call this neighbor Y. In 2002, when Y was a freshman in high school, his father was transferred to a city in the Northwest due to work. Y's father would have to stay there for several years. To take care of his father, Y's mother decided to move the entire family to this new city. The parents arranged for Y to transfer to a new high school and found a new job locally. The family rented an apartment near the father's workplace. Coincidentally, there was a factory workers' residential area nearby with available rentals. The buildings in this community were old-style, 6-story slab buildings, with 2 units per staircase. The father took a look around and finally chose a 3-bedroom, 1 living room apartment on the 4th floor of a certain unit. The landlord himself did not show up, but entrusted a distant relative to manage the property. This relative came with the keys, opened the door, and showed the father around the apartment. The father found the 3-bedroom, 1 living room apartment quite spacious. 2 of the bedrooms were empty and very clean. The 3rd room had some items in it, which seemed to be some miscellaneous items the landlord hadn't had time to take away, but they were neatly packed in cardboard boxes, sealed with tape, showing that the landlord was an organized person. The apartment was fully furnished and in excellent condition, ready for immediate occupancy. All that was needed was to buy some bed sheets and pillowcases. Upon seeing this, the father was very satisfied. Since the family was eager to settle down quickly, he didn't hesitate and immediately signed the contract and paid the rent. After settling in, Y's parents quickly packed up their belongings and bought some essentials. That very evening, the family of 3 moved into their new home. They tidied up a bit and settled in for the night. Y had a particularly comfortable sleep. So comfortable that he didn't even dream. The next morning around 9 o'clock, Y's parents left for work after preparing breakfast for him. Since the transfer procedures for Y's school hadn't been completed yet, he was scheduled to start as a transfer student in a week. During this week, Y stayed at home. After having breakfast, Y wandered around the apartment. He made his way to the balcony, intending to take in the view of the neighborhood. Their rented apartment was an old building with an open balcony. Standing on the balcony, he noticed that the weather was quite nice. Most people in the neighborhood were at work, making it very quiet. He stretched on the balcony, looking around, when he noticed someone on the balcony a few meters away downstairs. It was a middle-aged woman staring up at him. She was very ordinary in appearance and attire. She would easily blend into a crowd. This ordinary woman had a pale face, an expressionless look, and a cold, unblinking gaze fixed on Y. Y didn't know her, and her staring made him feel uneasy. He wondered to himself, "Who are you? Why are you looking at me like that?" He considered glaring back, but decided against it. Instead, he turned around and went back inside without acknowledging her. Back inside, Y was still feeling a bit uncomfortable when he suddenly heard some noise from within the apartment. It seemed to be coming from the room where the miscellaneous items were stored. It sounded like someone was rummaging through cardboard boxes. His parents were at work, and he was the only one in the room. His first thought was that there might be a mouse. Why am I hearing noises from the storage room? Is there a mouse running around inside? He wondered. He quickly went to the storage room and pushed the door open. The room was dimly lit because the curtains were drawn, but it was still daytime, so he could see inside. The room was tidy with boxes neatly stacked and no signs of disorder. He looked around but didn't see any mice or other creatures. Just as he was puzzled, he heard a strange noise from within the storage room again. What was it? It sounded like heavy breathing, the kind of sound someone might make when they were nervous. The sound startled Y, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He let out a loud ah and quickly backed away, nearly sitting down on the floor. What's going on? What's making that noise? How come it sounds like there's someone else in here? What's happening? He thought to himself. He quickly shut the door and felt his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't dare stay in the room alone anymore. He quickly put on his shoes and ran out of the house. Where could he go? His parents were at work and he was alone outside. The sunlight made him feel a bit more relaxed. He thought to himself, I'm a grown man. If I go to my parents and tell them that there's something strange in the house and that I heard someone breathing, it would be ridiculous. I'd be laughed at. I'll go find my cousin instead. He had a distant cousin who worked as a security guard at a school in the city. This cousin had helped a lot with the transfer procedures. Y decided to go to the school and find his cousin. When he arrived at the school and asked the gatekeeper, he found out that his cousin had been on night duty the previous evening and was probably still sleeping in the dormitory. After finding out where the dormitory was, Y went to wake his cousin up. His cousin, woken up from his nap, was groggy and had dark circles under his eyes, looking like a panda. Y said, "Brother, what's going on? You must be really tired from working the night shift at the school. I thought it would be easy just locking the school gates at night and sleeping in the duty room. Do you have to stay up all night? His cousin replied, Don't even mention it. It used to be easy as you said. Once the school gates were locked at night, what could happen? I'd take a walk around and sleep until morning. But ever since that incident at the school 3 months ago, things have been restless. It's been a bit better since school started again. But I still have one problem. I can't sleep during my night shift. I can't close my eyes for fear of having nightmares. It's better for me to just stay awake the whole night. It's been really tough. He had just been scared out of his wits at home for no apparent reason. He was feeling lonely and wanted to talk to someone. That's when he heard his cousin mention something about a strange incident at the school. Why's interest was piqued. He had just been spooked himself and was looking for someone to talk to. He urged his cousin to tell him what had happened. What happened at the school 3 months ago? Why asked. His cousin couldn't resist the pressure. He got up, washed his face, lit a cigarette, and took a few puffs before starting to tell the story. His cousin worked at the school, which was the best one in the area. It had both junior and senior high school departments. The school had a great academic atmosphere and the highest college entrance examination admission rate in the area. For years, the most serious incidents in the school were just some conflicts between students and teachers or fights between students. There had never been any serious malicious incidents that could make it to the social news. Until one afternoon 3 months ago, around 4 o'clock, his cousin was walking from the vice principal's office at the back of the school to the front playground. He noticed several students gathered together, pointing at the teaching building right in front of the school gate. Be careful, be careful. The students were shouting. His cousin shouted, What's going on? Looking up in the direction the students were pointing, he saw a student on the 5th floor of the teaching building. The student was half in and half out of the window, sitting on the windowsill with half of his body already outside the window. Seeing how dangerous the situation was, his cousin opened his mouth to shout, go back, it's too dangerous. Before he could get the words out, he saw the students suddenly grab the window, step on the windowsill and stand up. After standing up, the student wobbled and without any hesitation, he jumped off the 5th floor. Amidst the screams of the students, there was a thud. In that instant, the air seemed to freeze and everyone fell silent, stunned. It took a moment for his cousin to react and he quickly shouted, Quickly, help him. He rushed over as fast as he could. The scene was too gruesome to describe. The school immediately called the police, who arrived and cordoned off the area. Since the incident happened during self-study class, all the students in the class witnessed the whole thing. They all testified that everything had been normal before. The student's seat was next to the window and no one had bothered him. For some unknown reason, he suddenly stood up from his seat, climbed over the windowsill, opened the window and sat on it. After sitting on the windowsill, he muttered something, but the students around him didn't catch what he said. Before they could react, he jumped down. The whole process was extremely fast. He didn't have any verbal or physical conflict with anyone. It was sudden, unexpected, and extremely shocking. After several days of investigation, the police and the school concluded that the student had committed suicide. The school then had to negotiate with the family to handle the aftermath. But this sudden jumping incident had a huge impact on everyone at the school, including his cousin. His cousin had seen a young life end so violently right in front of his eyes. The shock was too great to recover from in a short time. From that day on, his cousin began to have nightmares when he was on duty at night. But it wasn't just because of that. A few days later, one night when his cousin was on night duty at the school, he was just about to close his eyes for a bit when suddenly he felt an unexplained pounding heartache. He quickly opened his eyes. Just as he was feeling panicked, he heard a sound. What was it? It sounded like someone was crying. He heard a drifting, sobbing sound coming from outside the duty room. What was going on? Who was crying? He strained to listen carefully. It sounded like crying, but it also seemed like the wind whistling through some narrow gaps, making a kind of sobbing noise. This sound made him feel very uneasy, and he couldn't sit still. He grabbed his flashlight, got up from the duty room, and decided to look around. It was midnight. The moon was bright, casting a pale light on the school grounds. The students had all gone back, some to the dormitory and some home. The school was empty except for him. He walked around the campus with his flashlight, listening carefully, and he could indeed hear the faint sobbing sound. As he walked looking around, he suddenly realized that he had walked to the exact spot where the student had jumped. When he got there, he instinctively looked up at the teaching building. His blood ran cold. Under the moonlight, he saw a pale face pressed against a window on the 5th floor of the teaching building, staring at him coldly. So, that was the same window where the student had jumped. At that moment, his cousin was completely terrified. He stood there, stunned for a good while, before he finally let out a blood-curdling scream and turned around, running back to the duty room as fast as he could. He slammed the door shut and locked it from the inside. This grown man then hid under the covers and stayed there until dawn. He was so scared that even when the senior high students, who usually came early, started banging on the school gate because it was still closed, he didn't dare to come out. But his cousin didn't dare to tell his colleagues at the school about this. That day, he made up an excuse and asked a male teacher to accompany him to check around the teaching building. Everything seemed normal. They even went up to the classroom where the incident had happened. Through the glass door, they saw the teacher was giving a lecture and the students were taking notes and listening attentively. There was no sign of anything unusual. His cousin thought to himself that maybe he had just been under too much stress and had seen wrong the night before. He decided not to make a fuss about it. If it spread around the school and the leaders found out, he would be in trouble. So he buried this incident deep in his heart. But from then on, whenever he was on night duty, he always thought he could hear strange noises. Fortunately, the school soon went on summer vacation, which saved him. He stayed at home for nearly 2 months and everything was fine. When the school reopened, he was a bit nervous, but after coming back and being on night duty again, everything seemed normal. He didn't hear any strange noises or movements at night. However, he still couldn't sleep soundly and would have nightmares as soon as he closed his eyes. For example, last night he had a nightmare. He felt that in the dream, there was a face that was unclear and unrecognizable, hiding not far away and secretly peeping at him. It would sigh from time to time, which made him dare not close his eyes all night. That's why he was so sleepy today. Hearing this story, Wyatt also felt very uncomfortable. He asked his cousin, why did the student jump? There must be some reason. Was it something at home, or was he bullied by classmates? His cousin shook his head repeatedly and said, No, it definitely wasn't bullying. Both the school and the police had investigated thoroughly before. There was absolutely no bullying targeted at him. The two of them chatted for a while and then realized that it was almost noon. Wyatt's mother would be back to cook lunch soon. He said goodbye to his cousin and started walking home. On the way home from school, he passed by a market. There was a small shop selling cassettes and audiovisual products. The shop was open and a big cassette player at the entrance was playing the latest popular songs at a high volume. Y had nothing else to do and was attracted by the music. So he wandered into the shop. He saw a plump shopkeeper sitting behind the counter. On both sides of the counter were shelves, filled with various new radios and single or double-deck cassette players. Y was just a poor middle school student. At that time, a cassette player was as expensive to him as a car. He didn't even need to think or ask about the price. After he entered the shop, he looked around to see if there was anything he could afford. He noticed in the glass counter there were a few models of Walkmans. These were small-sized cassette players that you could listen to with headphones. Some of his friends from well-off families had them and would listen to them on their way to and from school. All the other kids were very envious. He stood there, touching and examining them. The shopkeeper noticed that Y was staring at the Walkmans and struck up a conversation with him. "So, young man, which one are you interested in? We have a variety of Walkmans. The prices range from cheap to expensive. Take a look. How much are you planning to spend? I can help you pick one. We have all kinds of prices." "Well, how cheap can it get?" Y asked. "What's your budget?" The shopkeeper replied. Y casually mentioned a price that he could afford. Upon hearing his budget, the shopkeeper said, "You're in luck. We do have one." She got up, opened a drawer behind her and took out a Walkman and handed it to him. Y saw that the Walkman had a black body with red trim and a black and white pattern. It looked quite nice. "Look, this one is not new. It's second-hand, but in excellent condition, almost like new. No problems at all," she said. He took it and examined it carefully. He opened the cassette compartment and found a cassette inside. He took it out and saw that it was a blank cassette with no label on it. It seemed like someone had recorded something on it themselves. The shopkeeper explained. This Walkman was returned by someone who didn't use it for long after purchasing it. There are no quality issues. For the price you're offering, I can sell it to you at a slightly lower price. Y took a close look at the Walkman. Although it was second-hand, it was evident that there were a few scratches on it, but they were not severe. There were no major dents or damages. He examined it carefully from all angles and grew more and more fond of it. He tested it with the cassette inside and found that it worked perfectly. The cassette contained classic songs, and the sound quality was good. Fearing that the shopkeeper might change her mind, he quickly took out all the pocket money his parents had given him and paid for the second-hand Walkman. He left the shop, listening to the music and feeling delighted all the way home. When he got home, he didn't dare let his parents see the Walkman. He was afraid that they would scold him. His mother was already in the kitchen, almost done with cooking. She asked him, "Where have you been?" "I went to school to chat with my cousin," Y replied, making small talk with his mom. As soon as he got home, Y couldn't stop thinking about the strange incident in the utility room. His mother was in the kitchen, making nice with the cooking utensils. Taking advantage of the situation, he mustered up the courage to check the utility room again. This time, he even opened the curtains and thoroughly inspected every corner. He looked under the bed and inside the cabinets. The room was clean and tidy. There were no signs of any living creatures like mice. He noticed a cardboard box on the floor, sealed with tape. All the boxes were taped shut, except for one on a table. This box was not sealed. It had a name written on it in black marker. Out of curiosity, Y opened the box and started rummaging through it. He found notebooks, textbooks, and exercise books, all from the first year of junior high school. They all had Class 3 Grade 1 written on them. He figured that these must have belonged to the child of the previous landlord. Why hadn't they taken these things with them? At the bottom of the box, he found a few photo frames. Inside were family portraits of a couple with a child who looked to be around 13 or 14 years old, about the age of a first-year junior high school student. Just as he was looking at them, his mother called him for dinner. He quickly put everything back into the box, afraid that his mother would find out that he had been rummaging through other people's belongings. He then went back to the kitchen, pretending nothing had happened, and helped his mother serve the dishes and set the table. It was just the two of them eating. Why mentioned? This morning, I was on the balcony by myself and I saw a woman standing on the third-floor balcony below us. She had a cold expression and was staring at me. I don't know why. His mother replied, "We've just moved here and it is a bit desolate. We don't know what our neighbors do for a living. There have been a lot of things going on lately. When we have time, we should find out more. After all, a good relationship with neighbors is always beneficial." After finishing dinner and helping his mother clean up, Why couldn't stop thinking about his newly bought Walkman. So, he went back to his room, closed the door and lay down on the bed. He planned to listen to some music and take a short nap. He took out the Walkman, put on the headphones and pressed the play button. The cassette started to spin, and he closed his eyes contentedly as he listened to the old songs recorded on it. Soon, the first song ended. There was a brief pause between the songs followed by some static. He pressed the fast-forward button and then the play button again when he heard music. Suddenly, an ethereal and melodious voice filled his ears. It was so unique that it sent shivers down his spine. He had never heard this song before. It wasn't a popular song like the ones he usually listened to. He sat up abruptly, holding the headphones with both hands, and listened carefully. Accompanying the voice was another enchanting male voice, singing a song he had never heard before. The lyrics went like this: "When night falls, the ghosts sing with you. The western gate will open and the moon will rise, waiting for your ascension. Raise your head and feel the moonlight. Close your eyes and embrace its care. Let hope shine on your face. Let the ghostly aura fill your being. Let your eyes see through the world and let your soul soar above the moon. Everyone knows the sun rises in the east. Everyone knows the moon rises from the dark. The white snow-capped mountains with Mount Everest. The dark midnight with white spirits." He had never heard this song before and had no idea that it was actually a representative work of the rock singer Wang Yang, titled Summoning the Soul. After the music finished, the static noise came on again. This time he didn't press the fast-forward button. He was so captivated by the song that he sat there in a daze. After a while, the next song started, and to his surprise, it was the same song. He listened to half of it and realized it was indeed the same song as before. He fast-forwarded again, but the next song was still the same. After trying a few more times, he discovered that the cassette had a few classic old songs at the beginning, but the rest was just this one song repeating over and over again. He sat and listened for a while, but soon felt tired. He lay down on the bed and kept listening to the song repeatedly. Gradually, he felt sleepy and soon fell asleep. What he didn't expect was that he had a strange dream. In his dream, he found himself in a very peculiar place. The room was narrow with half-high cement walls painted in green. He felt himself curled up in the corner of the room, with a shabby yellowish-brown wooden door diagonally opposite to him. The door wasn't fully closed, and a bright red glow seeped through the crack. But this light didn't illuminate the entire room. He squinted his eyes, trying to see clearly with the help of the faint light from the gap. He couldn't make out the whole room, but he felt there was a landscape painting hanging on the nearby wall. He couldn't see what the painting was, but he could see 2 lines of large characters written on the side. They seemed to be the famous quotes from Zhuge Liang's admonitions to his son. Without detachment, one cannot clarify one's ambition. Without serenity, one cannot achieve far-reaching goals. Beneath the painting was a table. Under the dim light, it looked old and worn. On the table was a large vase with a feather duster inside. It seemed like a typical home setting, but the atmosphere felt eerie. And for some reason, he felt that the environment was very harsh. It wasn't just because the space was cramped. It seemed like the air in the room was bad. He could smell something foul like the stench of feces and urine. Why couldn't explain why, but in his dream he felt like an emotionless observer. He didn't have the urge to figure out where he was or why he was there. It was as if everything had been like this for a long time and it was just a matter of course. Subconsciously, he tried to stand up by leaning on the wall. As soon as he moved, he heard a clinking sound. He looked down and saw that he was wearing a dirty tracksuit. Around his waist was a chain, and the end of the chain was locked to a hook on the wall beside him. The chain was less than a meter long. He was tied here and couldn't even stand up completely. He tugged at the chain and struggled, making a clattering noise. But he still couldn't stand up. He felt very uncomfortable inside. Suddenly, he shivered and woke up. He found himself lying in his bed in his bedroom. It took him a moment to realize that he had just had a strange dream. But the dream had been so vivid. He looked at his watch and saw that it was almost 3 in the afternoon. His mom had already gone back to work. He had nothing to do in the afternoon. He wouldn't start school until next week. So he decided to go see his cousin again. He went to the school's security room and saw his cousin. At that time, there were several other people in the security room. He didn't know if they were teachers or staff members from the school. They were chatting. His cousin invited Y to sit down, but he didn't pay much attention to him and continued talking with his colleagues. Y sat there feeling bored. He couldn't join the conversation. He didn't know these people and no one paid attention to him. He had already had a bad dream at noon and hadn't slept well. He was listless as he sat there. He took out the second-hand Walkman from his pocket and started playing with it. He wanted to listen to some music. His cousin saw it and seemed surprised. He said, "How come you have one of these? It looks familiar." Then he made a strange expression and shook his head. "Never mind, forget I said anything." Y was puzzled, but when he asked his cousin about it, he changed the subject. Y stayed there for a while, but still couldn't join the conversation. He felt it was pointless. Besides, it was almost time for school to let out. The people in the room got up one by one and left to do their own things. His cousin also had to get back to work. Y didn't want to disturb him any longer, so he got up and went home. In the evening, when his parents came back, the family had dinner together and chatted for a while. Around 10 o'clock, Y took a shower, went back to his room, lay down on the bed and put on his headphones as usual. He turned the cassette over because the other side had the same song repeated several times, which he found boring. The music started and it was a song he hadn't heard before. The style was a bit similar to the one on the other side. He noticed that this side of the cassette only had this one song, unlike the other side, which had a few classic songs at the beginning. He listened to the song and soon fell asleep again. But he had another strange dream. In the dream, he was still in that narrow and cramped place. But this time, he was holding something in his hand. What was it? It was a Walkman, and it was exactly the same as the second-hand one he had bought. It had a red and black design. He pressed the play button and felt like he was wearing headphones. But he didn't hear any music. Although he couldn't hear the music, he could hear a man and a woman talking outside the room. First, he heard the woman's voice saying, "I'm not rushing you, but we can't go on like this anymore. The child is growing up and can't be without a father forever. I can manage his daily life." But the teachers at school keep saying that the child's studies and family situation need to be taken seriously by the family. I'm just a woman and I can't handle these things. Besides, it's not right for the child to grow up without a father. It has a big impact on him. Some classmates make fun of him and say hurtful things. Some kids can be really mean. They call him a fatherless brat and say his father must be a criminal who's been arrested or even killed. They say all kinds of terrible things. The child is very upset. He's asked about his father, and I told him that his father has gone away and won't come back. He doesn't talk much and doesn't interact with others at school. His academic performance is also suffering. The teacher said that the child is smart, but if the family doesn't pay attention, it will be too late. So today you have to give me a clear answer. What are you going to do? Give me some hope. I'm telling you, don't stay silent. We can't put this off any longer. Today, while your wife is on night duty, and now you have to give me a definite answer. Then there was a silence, followed by a deep male voice. Don't keep repeating yourself about this. I've thought it through these past 2 years. We really can't delay any longer. You calm down first and take more care of the child. I'll think of something. Give me a bit more time. I reckon and at most a year our family will be reunited. The woman replied, "Really? In a year? You're not lying to me. You still have some conscience left. What are you going to do?" At that moment, Weiss saw a middle-aged man's cold-faced, venomous-eyed, and disdainful-looking face appear through the crack in the door in front of him. The man glanced at him and then slammed the door shut. The sound of the door closing startled Weiss awake from his dream. He quickly turned on the bedside lamp to make sure he was safe and sound in his own bedroom. Only then did he let out a sigh of relief. This was really strange. How could his dreams be like a TV series? The dream was so vivid that every image and sound was as clear in his mind, as if he had just watched a TV show. Moreover, the Walkman that appeared in the dream was the very one he had bought at noon, and the man's face in the dream was both familiar and strange to him. It was strange because he had never seen this face before today. It was familiar because when he had rummaged through the landlord's leftover items in the utility room at noon, he had seen a family portrait in a photo frame at the bottom of a box. The man in the photo was the same one he had seen in his dream. Who was this man? Why did he dream about him? As we mentioned, the family in the photo consisted of a junior high school student, his father, and his mother. Why did he dream about the father? He didn't understand. This question made him very confused, and he didn't sleep well for the rest of the night. He only dozed off for a short while before waking up again. By then, his parents had already left for work and had left some breakfast for him. Why ate a few bites and didn't have anywhere to go or anything to do. He thought, I'll go to school and find my cousin. After all, in this unfamiliar city besides his parents, his cousin was the only person he knew. When he arrived at the school's security room, his cousin was drinking tea. Seeing Y's pale face, he asked, "What's wrong?" Y didn't dare to hide it and told his cousin about the nightmares he had been having for the past 2 days. His cousin was very surprised. How could that be? Is it true? Seeing his cousin's reaction, Y knew there was something more to it and pressed for an explanation. "What do you mean, is it true or not?" Unable to avoid it any longer, his cousin finally told him some surprising information. He said, "When you came yesterday and told me about the place you rented near your dad's workplace, which unit and floor it was, I didn't think much of it at first. But then I thought about it and realized how coincidental it was. Where the student who jumped off the building lived. The student who committed suicide. The apartment you rented is the same one I told you about before. His family consisted of his father, who was a civil servant here, his mother, who was a nurse at a certain hospital, and him, their only son. After the child jumped, his mother fell seriously ill and her mental state was very poor. She probably didn't want to live here anymore, as everything reminded her of her son. So she moved away. I heard she moved to some other place. The original house was then put up for rent. Since you came from out of town, of course you wouldn't know about this. I didn't know at first either. When I heard you rented there, I thought it was fine. After all, the child committed suicide at school, not at home. The house isn't a haunted house. So I didn't say anything. I was afraid that if you knew, you might feel uncomfortable about such a coincidence. Y felt a chill down his spine after hearing this. It got even worse when his cousin told him that he had seen a Walkman of the same model as the one Y bought before. It was on the day the student jumped. That day, his cousin was patrolling the school building lobby when he saw a rather plump middle-aged woman leading to men storm into the school through the school gate. The security guard at the gate couldn't stop them. Seeing his cousin there, he quickly called out, "What's going on here?" The woman kept walking and pointing her finger, cursing. "The students in your school are simply lawless. A student from a good school came to my store and stole things in broad daylight. I'm going to catch this little thief with my own hands today." When his cousin approached, he said, "Comrade," but the woman replied, "Get out of my way." She pushed past him and stormed into the school. So his cousin quickly chased after the woman and asked, "What's going on, comrade?" The plump woman huffed and told him, "I run a sound system store in the nearby market. It was around 1 in the afternoon. I was alone in the store, eating at the counter when a boy wearing your school's uniform came in. He looked to be about 13 or 14 years old. A first-year junior high school student with a bag slung over his shoulder and quite tall. He came in and looked around. I asked him what he was looking for. He said he wanted to buy a Walkman. I put my meal aside and took out a sample Walkman from the counter to show him. While I was eating, I saw him examining it, carefully touching this and that. He even took it to the entrance and held it up to the sunlight, examining it thoroughly, saying, "Is this new?" "Yes, it's new. Why do you ask?" After looking at it for a long time and fiddling with it, he finally put it down and said, "Forget it. I don't want it." He turned around and left. The shopkeeper thought to herself, "What a nuisance this kid is. If you don't want it, just say so." She muttered a few complaints under her breath. After she finished her meal and tittied up, she was about to put the Walkman back in the counter when she noticed something was wrong. One of the red and black Walkmans had a dent in the upper right corner and scratch marks on it. She quickly opened the cassette compartment and found a cassette inside. The shopkeeper realized what had happened. Her new item had been switched. It must have been that boy who had pulled a fast one on her. She was furious. She grabbed the device and rushed out of the store. But the boy was long gone. She recognized the boy because he was wearing a school uniform. He must be a student from that school. She couldn't believe that a student from a prestigious school would come to her store and steal. The shopkeeper quickly called to male neighbors, and they headed to the school to demand an explanation. She planned to search every classroom until she found the boy. She was determined to get her Walkman back and give him a good scolding. His cousin told Y that the Walkman the shopkeeper was holding was exactly the same model as the one Y had bought. It had a black body with red trim. The shopkeeper was so angry and made such a scene that many students gathered around to watch. His cousin thought this was not good and said to the woman, "You can't just shout here. Come with me." "Where am I supposed to go with you?" the woman asked. "To the vice principal's office," his cousin replied. He quickly took the group to the vice principal's office and explained the situation. The vice principal said, "All right, you go wait outside for now. We don't want this to cause a bad influence." He asked his cousin to go to the front of the school to prevent other students from gossiping about the incident. The vice principal would personally handle the matter. However, as his cousin was walking back to the teaching building from the back, he witnessed the tragic scene of the student jumping off the building. Y was extremely shocked after hearing this. He never expected that there was such a story behind the suicide incident his cousin had mentioned before. The student had switched the Walkman. Could it be that when the shopkeeper came to the school to find him and confront him, he felt guilty and couldn't bear it? So he jumped off the building and committed suicide? It seemed a bit far-fetched. His cousin looked at Y and, after a long silence, said, "This matter is not as simple as it seems. Let me tell you, I heard this from other teachers in private. Some of them knew the police officer in charge of the investigation. This is all hearsay, and the matter is quite sensitive. You mustn't spread it around. Don't say I told you, and I won't admit it if you do." Y said, "Don't worry. I promise I won't tell. Don't keep me in suspense. What really happened?" His cousin then continued. "Originally, the family of the boy, J, lived a normal life in the apartment you are now living in. Everything was fine. However, there was a neighbor living 3 floors below them. This family originally had 4 members, a couple and their 2 sons. But 2 years ago, the husband suddenly left without a word, reportedly running off with another woman and abandoning his wife and children. He was a real scoundrel, leaving his wife and 2 sons to fend for themselves. The woman, now a single mother of 2 sons, had a very hard life. Their elder son was born with hydrocephalus and was severely disabled. Unable to take care of himself, he stayed at home all the time and was not allowed to go out. The younger son, a few years younger than his elder brother, was a normal child and quite intelligent when he was little. However, the family situation was not good due to the parents' relationship and the elder brother's condition. The family was quite unfortunate, and as a result, the younger son became very introverted. Not long ago, the elder son fell ill. Since it was inconvenient for him to go to the hospital for injections, he had to administer them at home. And fortunately, he had an allergic reaction to penicillin and passed away. The Walkman, according to the investigation, was a gift the elder son had just received before he died. Who gave it to him? It was sent by the boy's uncle from another place. The elder son cherished it and treated it like a precious treasure. always holding it and listening to it carefully. But he hadn't had it for long before he died. And the Walkman then went to the younger son. According to the younger son, when he listened to the Walkman, it was still in good condition, about 90% new, but he kept hearing some strange crackling noises. He thought the Walkman was faulty and didn't tell his mother. Instead, he went to his elder brother, who was a close friend and neighbor from upstairs, and said, "What should I do if my Walkman is broken?" So Jay, the elder brother, patted his chest and assured the younger one, "I've been taught how to do this. No problem. It's a piece of cake. I can fix it." He took the Walkman home, but he had no idea how to repair it. After he took it apart, it was a mess. Not only did he fail to fix it, but he also had trouble putting it back together. After he managed to put it back together, he found that not only did the crackling noise remain, but sometimes the tape would get stuck as well. The problem had become worse. The younger brother kept asking him, "Is it fixed? Is it fixed?" Jay, feeling embarrassed because he had boasted about being able to fix it, was worried that if he returned it in a worse condition, it would be obvious that he had failed. He came up with a plan. Since there was a sound system store in the market, he decided to pull a switcher, like replacing the old with the new. However, he was caught by the shopkeeper, who chased him to the school. He was probably in the classroom when he overheard the students talking about a woman and two men coming to the school, saying that a student from their school had stolen a Walkman. Fearing that he would be caught, he was overwhelmed with fear and, in a moment of confusion, jumped out of the window. His cousin, of course, had heard this from others. The police later investigated the younger brother living downstairs and found that he had suddenly become mentally unstable and incoherent. What had happened? It seemed that when Jay jumped off the building, the younger brother happened to be at school the afternoon with no classes. He went to the school to ask his elder brother for the Walkman. By coincidence, he witnessed the tragic scene of Jay jumping off the building and dying right in front of him. He was so terrified that he went insane on the spot. After returning home, he kept crying and said that there was a voice in his head talking to him, but he couldn't make out what it was saying. In the end, after all the investigations, the police concluded that since the case involved minors and the person involved had already passed away, and Jay's parents did not want to make a big deal out of it, fearing that their son would be labeled a thief and become the subject of gossip, they did not make any compensation claims against the school or anyone else. The plump shopkeeper was also happy to let the matter rest. She never expected that what she thought was a justified claim would end in a death. Both sides made compromises, and the case was closed as a suicide. Indeed, the police found no other suspicious points or signs of harm or conflict. When his cousin got to this point in the story, a school leader called him for something and he had to leave immediately. Before he left, he warned Wei, "Don't go spreading this around." After hearing his cousin's story, Wei's mind was in turmoil. He seemed to understand some of the circumstances, but he had even more questions. The more he listened, the more confused he became. It was as if the whole story didn't add up, but there was one thing he was sure of. The second-hand Walkman he had bought at a low price was actually the very one that the deceased Jay had switched. In other words, this item had previously belonged to a child who had died from a penicillin allergy, and then had passed through Jay's hands, who had also died. This thing was just too ominous. Wei thought to himself that he had to confront the shopkeeper about this. He stormed into the shop, glaring at the shopkeeper and demanding, "What's the real story behind this Walkman? Where did it come from?" The shopkeeper was startled at first and tried to evade the question, saying, "A customer bought it and then returned it after using it for a couple of days because it wasn't suitable." Wei said, "Don't lie to me. I have already known. This is the machine that the student who jumped off the building Jay left with you. The shopkeeper, realizing that Y knew the truth, admitted it and said, yes, it was him. He switched a new one from my store. But when he felt it got smashed, what could I do? I had to accept the loss. I didn't deceive you. This one originally had a minor issue like a bit of tape sticking or something. I fixed it and it's in perfect working condition now. It's at least 89% new. The shopkeeper defended herself vigorously, saying, as for Jay's suicide, I had no fault in it. I was actually the victim. Of course, considering the principle of respecting the dead, and that I had a bit of involvement in the matter, I did contribute some consolation money. After the incident, you have no idea how much I suffered. Many people pointed fingers and said hurtful things, accusing me of driving a middle school student to death. These accusations put immense pressure on me. I've been suffering from insomnia and nightmares ever since, and I've been really unlucky because of this. So I'm asking for your understanding. I'm willing to give you a further discount. If that's still not acceptable, well, the Walkman is still usable and you won't be at a disadvantage. Y initially felt very uncomfortable about the whole situation, but after the shopkeeper explained and persuaded him, he was swayed. On one hand, he realized he wasn't really at a disadvantage. In fact, he was getting a good deal. On the other hand, he really liked the Walkman. Back then, he was just a poor kid, and in the end, he agreed to take a bit of money from the shopkeeper and let the matter rest. Who would have thought that on the same night after he got home and fell asleep listening to the Walkman, he had another strange dream similar to the previous ones. In the dream, he was once again in that narrow, cramped, and dirty space, curled up in a corner with a chain around his waist, the other end hanging on the wall. The air was still filled with the foul smell. Suddenly, there was a dull thud and a man walked in. It was the same cold-faced, middle-aged man who had appeared in his previous dreams. The man squatted down beside him, holding a syringe. In the dream, Y had no reaction and was injected by the man on his buttock. After the injection, the man left with the syringe. Y heard the man say outside, I've given him the penicillin injection. He has a severe allergic constitution. He'll have a reaction soon. When he does, you wait for a while and then come downstairs and knock on my door. If the hospital or the police come to ask you about the situation, remember what I told you. Just say that my wife gave you the medicine and was supposed to come and give the injection, but she had an emergency at the hospital and didn't come back. You felt sorry for the child who was suffering so much, so you gave the injection. You didn't expect such a consequence. Don't say anything else. Just cry and act as pitiful as possible. Leave the rest to me. A moment later, the man came back in, squatted down, and looked at Y, nodding. The reaction had already started. After that, he got up, closed the door, and left. In the dream, Y felt his vision gradually turn pitch black. He didn't know how much time had passed before he woke up from the nightmare. Recalling the eerie dream, he suddenly realized that he was already in tears, his pillow soaked with tears. He remembered experiencing the last hour of the poor child's life in the dream, a sense of dying that felt as long as 100 years. The endless pain, fear, despair, helplessness, and finally all turned into anger, an impulse to destroy everyone around him, even the whole world. After waking up, he suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of grievance. Because of this dream, he seemed to suddenly understand a bizarre truth. Who was the man who gave the injection? It was the same man in the family photo of Jay. That man should be Jay's father, and the one who was injected and with whom he empathized, locked in the room, should be the brain-damaged child downstairs. the elder brother who was said to have died from a penicillin allergy. No, the elder brother was murdered, killed by Jay's father. The elder brother couldn't just die in vain. The child was too pitiful. What should he do? He had to do something. He had to let those who did evil know that there was no truth in this world that could be forever concealed. He couldn't explain why he suddenly had this obsession, but he was utterly convinced of what he knew. In the next few hours, he was almost in a state as if he were drunk, and he began to write furiously, starting to write a letter. He wrote about the whole situation of the death of the brain-damaged child downstairs. After writing it, he thought, who should he give it to? He came up with an idea. The next morning, as soon as his parents left home, he got dressed immediately. Where was he going? He was going to find someone who... He was going to find the mother of the child who had jumped off the building, Jay. Why did he want to find her? At that time, he couldn't explain why he had such a thought, but he had an obsession in his mind. Only in this way could he take revenge on the man who had killed the elder brother, Jay's father. He wanted to inform Jay's mother about what had happened to her son's death, and the death of the poor child downstairs. What had the man done? What kind of person was the man who slept in the same bed with her? After telling her what would happen next would depend on what Jay's mother would do after knowing these things. According to what his cousin had said before, Y actually found out where Jay's mother lived. She lived in a small courtyard of a bungalow. After finding out this place, Y was really patient. He squatted at the entrance of an alley, pretending to watch a few old men playing chess in front of a small shop without saying a word. He waited there for a whole hour. A middle-aged woman came out of the courtyard, carrying a basket of groceries, with gray hair and as slightly hunched back. Her face didn't look good. As soon as he saw her, he stood up. It was the same woman he had seen in Jay's family photo. Judging by her appearance, she seemed to be going to the market to buy groceries. So Y began to follow Jay's mother from a distance, following her for about 10 minutes until they reached the local market. At this time, the market was crowded with people bustling and shoulder to shoulder. He watched as the woman moved around, looking at different stalls and buying some vegetables. Seizing an opportunity when the woman was squatting down to pick vegetables with her basket behind her, he quickly placed the plastic bag containing the letter and the Walkman under the basket, pressing it into the vegetables, and then got up and left quickly. After he got home, he let out a sigh of relief, as if he had accomplished something great. Strangely enough, from then on, he never had that strange dream again, and his life seemed to return to normal. So, about half a month later, Y had completed all the procedures for transferring and enrolling in his new school. He officially reported to the school and started his high school life, living a plain and normal student life. Every morning at 7, he would go to school and return home at 9 after evening study sessions. Just as he was about to forget about the whole Walkman incident, a Friday night occurrence changed his life forever. A shocking event happened at Y's home. On that Friday evening at 9, as soon as the evening study session ended, Y was delighted. Tomorrow was the weekend and he had already made plans with his deskmate to hang out on Saturday. Although he hadn't been at the school for long, he had already gotten along well with several classmates. He walked home with a few classmates who lived nearby, chatting all the way. Soon he arrived home. His dad wasn't there. His dad's job was very busy. It was common for him to work overtime on Friday nights, and he didn't come home every day. His mom was at home watching TV and waiting for him. As soon as she saw her son come back, she said, "Are you hungry? I can make you a late night snack." "I am a bit hungry," Y replied. "On a weekend night." Both mother and son were in good spirits. They ate something, chatted for a while, and then decided to go to bed early since they were both tired. Y went to bed and soon fell into a drowsy sleep. He didn't know what time it was when he suddenly woke up. After waking up, he didn't know why, but he felt an immense sense of tension, anxiety, and horror. It was as if he had a premonition that some disaster was about to happen. It felt like his heart was being tightly squeezed by an invisible hand, causing a sharp pain in his chest and a buzzing in his ears. He immediately sat up, unable to explain why he felt so uneasy. Suddenly, an indescribable, strange noise started echoing in his mind, getting louder and more urgent with each passing moment. He felt as if his head had been hit by a sledgehammer while wearing a motorcycle helmet. There was a loud ringing in his ears, and he felt dizzy and nauseous. He leaned over the side of the bed and dry-heaved a few times. At that moment, he noticed something was wrong. He could smell a strong, acrid smoke. It seemed like something was on fire. He quickly reached for the bedside lamp switch, but it didn't turn on. No electricity. He hurriedly got out of bed and felt his way to the bedroom door. As soon as he opened it, he was met with thick smoke and waves of heat that stung his face. He could see smoke seeping in through the gap under the wooden door. Along with a few sparks, he covered his mouth with his hand, held his breath, and ran to the door of his parents' bedroom. He tried to turn the doorknob, but the door was locked from the inside. Without wasting any more time, he shouted, "Mom, open the door." After a moment, the bedroom door suddenly opened and his mom rushed out, calling his name. The mother and son hugged each other tightly, both coughing uncontrollably from the smoke. They could see red flames flickering through the gaps in the door and glass, and they could see the fire outside on the balcony, already igniting the clutter. The door was blocked and the glass was on fire. The smoke in the living room was getting thicker and thicker, and the smell was becoming unbearable. They quickly retreated into the bedroom, closed the door, and took shelter there. The wooden door of the old house had wide gaps, and the smoke quickly filled the bedroom. His mom, in a panic, grabbed some bed sheets and pillowcases to stuff into the gaps. But it was useless. The smoke soon filled the room, and they were both choking and struggling to breathe. His mom ran to the window. They lived on the 4th floor, and the bedroom window was on the side of the building. Looking down, they could see a row of shrubs about a meter high in the green belt below. People were shouting, "Fire, fire!" But it was too dark to see anyone clearly. The mother and son helped each other climb onto the windowsill to catch their breath before they could decide what to do next, whether to jump together or not. There was a sudden loud explosion. The bedroom door was blown open by the force of the blast. With a crash, the door flew open and debris and sparks flew towards the mother and son. At that moment, Y was completely terrified, but his mom suddenly hugged him, facing away from the window. In that position, with the debris, sparks, and shattered glass, the mother and son were pushed into the air by the blast and then fell. Y's world went black, and he knew nothing until he woke up days later. What had happened? His mom had hugged him facing the blast, and they had broken through the glass and fallen from the building. Thanks to the cushioning effect of the shrubs and the fact that the child had been in good physical condition, he survived. He had multiple fractures, but managed to keep his life. However, his mom was gone. She also had multiple fractures, but the fatal injury was a cut to her neck's blood vessels by a piece of glass in midair, causing her to bleed to death on the spot. During the 2020 May Day holiday, by the bonfire at Jade Lake, Young, a man almost choked with emotion and wept as he recounted the story. He initially claimed it was about a neighbor's family, but as he got emotional, he forgot himself and started using "I and my mom." Everyone around, including Jung, knew it wasn't about a neighbor, it was Young's own story. The little boy he mentioned was himself, but no one was rude enough to point this out. Everyone just listened quietly. Young wiped his tears, took a few more sips of alcohol, and said that he wasn't very clear about what happened next. His father, upon receiving the news, rushed back and was almost devastated by the scene. But he still had to handle the aftermath. Since Young was severely injured and needed care, his father had to send him back to their hometown in Lanzhou, where his grandparents could look after him. At that time, his father told the injured Young that the fire downstairs was caused by a gas canister explosion. Although Young had many doubts, he didn't think much of it and just thought it was bad luck. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The injury and the pain of losing his mother greatly affected his studies. Young's college entrance examination results were far from satisfactory. He only got into a local second-tier university. His mood became even more depressed. His grandfather called his father back, and the two of them had a hearty drinking session. After this big drinking session, his father surprisingly told Young the whole story of his mother's death again, including the detailed account the public security authorities had told him after their investigation. He also shared what he had learned over the years by privately asking his cousin, contacting people inside the police force, and talking to his comrades in arms. It was shocking. It turned out that the house they rented was the one where Jay lived on the 4th floor. Downstairs from Jay lived a family of 4. The man of the house used to be in the herbal medicine business and was often away. The woman was a housewife taking care of their 2 children. The eldest child was born with hydrocephalus and was unable to take care of himself. He was very pitiful and was locked on the balcony all year round. After the second child was born, the man in the herbal medicine business started to have endless quarrels with his wife. Why? He suspected that the second child wasn't his own. He thought his wife had been unfaithful and had a child with someone else. Because of this, the couple fought constantly. The husband suspected his wife of infidelity and questioned the paternity of the second child. Meanwhile, the eldest child had hydrocephalus. How could they go on living like this? Later, the man heard that his wife had indeed had an affair and left home with another woman, never to return. But his suspicion wasn't entirely baseless. The second child wasn't his biological child after all. Whose child was it? It was the child of his wife and Jay's father, who lived upstairs. Jay's father wasn't a good person. The man downstairs was often away on business, and over time, he had an affair with the housewife living downstairs. They even had the second child together. After the woman's husband left with another woman, she confronted Jay's father, demanding that he take responsibility. He had no choice but to come up with a very malicious plan. Since his wife, Jay's mom, was a nurse at the hospital, he planned to use her connections to get some penicillin and inject it into the eldest child, who had severe penicillin allergies. Once the eldest child died from the penicillin allergy, there would only be the second child left, who was his own. This way he could get rid of the burden at home and also frame his wife for the incident. The penicillin would be blamed for the death, and his wife would take the fall. She was later disciplined by the hospital and was in a very bad mood, constantly arguing with him at home. He used this to create a divorce scandal. However, it's unclear why the eldest child was murdered and the second child was scared and had mental problems. Jay jumped off the building and died, and Jay's mother was mentally shocked. Jay's father was worried that if he divorced immediately, it would look too heartless. So he thought he would wait for a while. But Jay's mother somehow found out the truth about the affair and that the second child was her husband's. Because of this, she also indirectly caused the death of her beloved son. Filled with the desire for revenge, she tracked her husband and found out that on Fridays, under the pretext of working overtime, he would secretly go to the third floor to be with his mistress. Jay's mother was ruthless. She got a bucket of gasoline and in the middle of the night, when everyone was asleep, poured it into the hallway, soaking the entire staircase and even herself. Then she knocked on the door of the third floor apartment. The woman who opened the door, the mistress, was caught off guard and didn't react in time. In an instant, she was set on fire and rushed into the house. The 3 adults and 1 child were all trapped in the inferno and perished together. The fire spread from the 3rd floor to the 4th floor, where Young's family were living. Poor mom, an innocent person, lost her life because of this. Dad got drunk and, fueled by alcohol, told the whole story. Young was shocked after hearing this. He finally understood the truth behind the incident. It turned out that the fire was caused by the letter he had written to Jay's mom, detailing the whole story of Jay's death. This letter had ignited the mother's vengeful fury after experiencing the pain of losing her son and being betrayed by her husband. In other words, to some extent, it was Young's own actions that led to the death of the innocent mother. It was all too terrifying. So many years have passed, and Young still can't understand how he thought of writing a letter to tell Jay's mother the whole story then. The recurring nightmares and the impulsive actions he took after waking up seemed to be driven by a thought in his mind. He wasn't himself at that time. The strange noises he heard on the day of the incident and his uncontrollable emotions during that period were closely related. It was as if some mysterious and airy force was urging him, pushing him and making him do things he had no idea why he was doing. It wasn't until later that his cousin mysteriously told him that someone had seen Jay's mother frequently carrying that black and red Walkman and listening to the songs on it with headphones. Her facial expressions were sometimes grotesque, sometimes sad, and even on the night of the fire she was wearing it. In the end, when the people were entangled together, the Walkman was also destroyed in the fire. Later, through online research, Young found out that the song repeatedly recorded on side art of the cassette was called Summoning the Soul, and the only song on side B was called Requiem March, which sang about the silent and endless cycle of heaven, earth, people, and things. When autumn comes, the plants wither, the sky turns gray, and the spirits gather and disperse. The world plays mournful music to see them off, to rest and regenerate. The ghosts sing songs to welcome your arrival. These songs were also by the singer Wang Yang. Young wondered if the person who recorded these 2 songs on the cassette was the brain-damaged child's uncle. Why did he record such songs for the poor child or someone else? And why did the child love to listen to these 2 songs so much?